Good afternoon, everybody. I'm delighted to have been asked by GRIF to present to you. This is my fourth time. I would have presented last year, but it was arranged on a date that I couldn't make, so I had to give it a miss, and I'm delighted to be back. My brief today is to talk about the global delivery market. But before I do, can I say that... Oh, it's working. Okay, thank you. To talk about the global delivery market. My job in life is to enlighten. I enlighten operators, investors, and their suppliers throughout the whole supply chain. And I work in the UK, across Europe, to a degree in North America, and I have a passing but very skimpy knowledge of what's happening in this part of the world. And I bring a total contextual piece to decision making, to do with time, when are things going to happen, to do with place, where are things going to happen, and to do with the reasons. Why are things going to happen, what's driving change, and that sort of thing. So today, under the heading of delivery, I've actually got three subheadings. One is to look at the delivery market and as it's taking off globally, as much as I can. Then there are 5 layers in the market, and I want to go through those to give you some idea about why the changes that we're seeing are taking place, and that will then end up with looking at what's next, because at that point, hopefully, there will be some reasoning behind all the changes that I'm going to be talking about. So, restaurant delivery is a disruptor, and it's a disruptor because it's part of the IT revolution. I've got more to say about that in a minute or two, but there's a chart here that I just want to show you, which looks at up the side, the expenditure per head on delivery of food from restaurants, and along the bottom, it's investment or expenditure on e-commerce, all by individuals. And there's clearly a relationship. It's not perfect. I've drawn a nice black line there to show you how perfect it is. But actually, if you look closely, it's not perfect. But it does show that as companies, as countries become more e-commerce involved, so restaurant delivery grows, because delivery is part of the e-commerce revolution. And because there are so many different countries in so many different places on that trajectory, it's actually very difficult to draw conclusions about where the global delivery market is. So my task really is just to help you understand some of the issues behind what we're seeing in delivery. Here's some work that I've been working on to attempt to map out the delivery market in a number of different countries. The size of the columns shows how important restaurant food delivery is per country, and that it's split between what I will ultimately call aggregator and aggregator deliverer. Don't worry about that for the moment. But I think the most intriguing part of this is when you look at who is involved in delivery in each of these markets. In most of them, there is a big player. In some countries, there is more than one. North America has actually got a lot. I've just highlighted 3. And America is, at the moment, in terms of delivery, is regional. So you have key players in each region. But another outlier on this trajectory here is Germany, where there are a lot of players, lots of big players. Delivery Hero, Foodora, their sister company, Deliveroo, and Takeaway.com, amongst others. And that means that conditions in the delivery market in Germany are more dynamic and more cost-driven than they are in other countries, even than the UK, which for those from the UK might come as a bit of a surprise. But the key issue here is that food delivery differs from country to country, but with a growing predominance of just one, possibly two players per country. So just to talk a little bit about the way that delivery is organized, and there are all sorts of different models you can use, and this is the one that I do, based on the fact that you can use a third party to do your delivery. You can run delivery from your own store, which is the long-term traditional way, or you can use a third-party deliverer. And under that is the issue now of where does the order get captured? Is it captured by an IT aggregator, a company like Grubhub in the States or Deliveroo in the UK? They capture the order from many different customers and farm out the order to the restaurants concerned. Or they can use their own website, or using the old-fashioned technology, which may be a very basic website, or telephone, or even people popping in the day before to place the order. Old-fashioned technology. And here are some examples of the companies that are involved. And under that is the way that these different services are used. So what I call the aggregator deliverer model are operators who don't have the delivery capability, but have the use of a number of different suppliers who are doing the delivery business for them. And this is what is actually driving the delivery market. It's that element. There are also independents who have their own delivery capability, the small corner store that will run a delivery from the store itself. There are, very importantly, chains, particularly pizza chains in the States, Domino's, Pizza Hut, Papa John's, and the sub-brand Jimmy Hortons, for example, who run their own website, and delivery is just a part of what they do. And then there are independents who run their own telephone business. So it's a complete system, but many different components. And when people talk about delivery, it tends to be about the Deliveroo, the delivery hero model. But it's more than that. And here I've compared two countries, the US and the UK, and I'm working on other countries to provide similar information. And you can see that they operate and they are working in different ways, most notably in the UK, where the yellow line, which is the aggregators like Just Eat, who are playing hard in that, well, I say like Just Eat, basically Just Eat, playing hard and taking business away from the pale green line, who are independents. In the States, that's not happening to the same extent. But in both countries, the dark green line represents the Domino's model, and that is growing strongly and has been growing for a long time. So there are differences and there are similarities. And why has delivery grown? Well, in a nutshell, there's a historical driver. It's just jolly convenient. It's what the customer wants, and there are some established people driving that segment. More recently, we've had the emergence of well-funded companies, quoted companies, who are working very hard in this market space. We've had technology which has allowed delivery to grow, and we've got operators who are searching for growth. On the demand side, we've got customers who expect delivery, we've got customers who expect it now, and we've got customers who are very adept at using technology. So that's an assessment of where the market is, and I now just want to unpick some of those elements, and I've called this the 5 layers because there are 5 of them, and here they are. There's the customer, typically presented as a millennial, but not always a millennial by any means. People of all ages and all parts of the world, parts of the economy are participating. Here's some work that I've taken from a number of different companies. It's not my own. And what it actually shows is that there are commonalities, depending on where on that graph the customer sits. But a key driver for delivery is lifestyle. It's what I do, it's how I expect things to happen. Availability, if you don't have delivery in your area, you can't have it. And that is more likely to happen if there is enough business concentrated in an area. And as delivery grows, as economies develop, there's more potential coming on the scene. Customers are willing to pay for more for delivery, which always comes as a bit of a surprise, but they claim to want to spend more or prepared to spend more, and one of the motivators is about providing riders with sufficient money to do the delivery. It makes the customer feel good. So the rider. Hard work, not always on a bike, sometimes on a motorcycle, sometimes even in a car or in a van or other vehicles which I haven't got time to go into. And riders are motivated to work in this sector because it gives them freedom, it gives them flexibility, it gives them income, and for some people it's part of how they live their life. They're living a plural life. It gives them exercise, and it can be sociable by mixing with people and chatting to people all day long. Why don't you want to do it? Well, it's not very well paid. Employment rights are constrained. It can be dangerous, riding fast in traffic, for example. It's hard work and can be very frustrating. And for operators, there are issues around churn, gaining new riders all the time, having them available. There's regulatory pressure because there's critical comment on social media, in the news media generally, and a question about whether the rider is a suitable face for your restaurant. A very important consideration. And it gives the restaurant has suboptimal control about food, about the relationship with the customer, about delivery, and a whole range of other things. So the question to me is, a big question is, what happens in the future with this model of gig economy riders delivering food? I'll attempt to answer that later on, but the next layer is the restaurant, and for some restaurants, food delivery is fundamental. Domino's, for example. Domino's wouldn't be Domino's if it didn't do delivery. For the rest of the market, it provides incremental income, and everybody else is doing it, and if I don't do it, I'm going to lose market share. Not always a good argument, but it's one that's commonly used. Why shouldn't you want to get into delivery? Well, commissions are high. Depending on the model you're signed up to, it can be anything between 12 and 50%, if you're in a Deliveroo Editions family, for example. It therefore reduces margins. There is growing competition in this space, so the first mover who has built a model that works on delivery finds new companies come in, and their existing model for delivery, the financials don't necessarily stack up as more and more people come into the market. There's weakened ownership of the brand because fundamentally the product is delivered in a bag on a bike. That's what the customer sees about the restaurant. And that damages brand values, and also the restaurant is no longer aware of who his or her customers are. So this business has got to come from somewhere, and it's coming from retailers. They haven't really hit back, but they might. There are complicated questions about how much they actually lose, because it's not the top line level, but it's more to do with a food price equivalent that we're looking at, but I'll go into that separately if you want me to. Another question for operators is, how do you manage this hit on the EBITDA? And how do you do something about the brand reputation, which can be damaged by delivery? And how to connect with customers? And the answer to all of those is, well, it depends. It depends who you are, where you are, what you're doing. And within this space, I'd also mention that traditional pizza, by which I mean the Domino's type model, not only Domino's, is possibly going to be constrained by the fact that if you want to order Domino's in most countries, not all, but in most countries, you have to go to the Domino's app. Whereas if I go to the Deliveroo app, I get a huge choice of restaurants. Does the customer prefer to go to one app for one supplier or one app for multiple suppliers? Choice being important tends to suggest that the open prairie model will have advantages over the walled garden model that's operated by the likes of Domino's. The deliverer is facing some issues. I've already mentioned the traditional pizza operators, the aggregators, that's the companies like Just Eat, are possibly coming up against headroom, because if they're taking business away from the independent mum and pop store, then they're going to run out of opportunities there and are going to have to do something about growing the market, which they tend to do, but they have to growing it even faster, or convert themselves to doing delivery as well, which damages their costing model. And for aggregator deliverers, the delivery heroes, for example, it can be unprofitable, or it is unprofitable until you get to a certain scale, until you've driven out the competition. And there are also questions about this last mile delivery model that I've said. So all of this means that there are issues, and there are political headwinds and a whole range of others, which is driving the delivery companies to a land grab, and that's costing money because it's not national, it's international, and it's beating. It's all about beating other well-funded competitors. So there is a battle going on there. And the battle is partly, or a lot, of concern, of interest to people who are investing in that space. And one question is delivery an IT business, or is it a human resource management business? Is it all about the technology, or is it all about the rider? There's a conflict there. Is there a model that crushes the competition still waiting to emerge? Is it unfinished business at the moment? And my answer is probably. And is there a threat yet from Amazon? What about Uber? What about Tencent entering markets where it's not always well represented? These are all big questions for the delivery investor. So finally, what's next for delivery, given that space that I've been talking about? Well, if we look at the scorecard, there is a plus point that customers want it. And there are a number of negatives. Customers pay more, receivers don't get enough money, the gig model is facing headwinds, operators suffering loss of profitability, operators are losing control over their brand, delivery models are being challenged by all sorts of people, deliverers are engaged in a costly land grab, and investors are facing awkward questions. So a lot of negatives, one positive, and I happen to believe that the positive is going to trump all the negatives. So that gives rise to the question about what does that mean? Well, there are 4 possible futures that I'm going to look at here. There are plenty more, but these are 4 that I've highlighted for today. First off is that nothing much changes. Well, that's fine, except that if nothing much changes, everything changes. There are so many moving parts. There are local issues, there are global issues, there's new competitors still coming into the market, there are regulatory impacts, and there's more. Deliverers will start to come up against their headspace where they are. They're going to have to find ways of increasing their addressable market. They're going to swap models, so Just Eat becomes Deliveroo, for example. So even if nothing happens, the future will be different from today. I'm just giving you some warning that I'm going to run a couple of minutes late, and I hope you can forgive me. Delivery becomes disentangled from IT. So the contradiction at the heart of the aggregator deliverer model, the 21st century IT combined with a 19th century employment model, taking on people who are standing at the factory gates waiting for the job every day, that contradiction needs to be resolved, and it becomes difficult to sustain. So that means that possibly the last mile delivery model that we're seeing at the moment is disambiguated from the IT model. Get someone else to do it, for example, or use a drone, use a driverless car, some other way of delivering the food. In the UK, Nando's, for example, are making use of third-party companies to deliver. The outcome could be the emergence of last-mile delivery specialists, but Amazon have been trying that for quite some time for their mainstream delivery, and it's still ambiguous. The third future is that restaurants lose control of everything. They already fear or are losing control over their brand because it's in the hands of the aggregator, deliverer, or more especially in the hands of the rider. Restaurants are losing control over their customers. Who are their customers? Restaurants being driven to being factories by removing the relationship between the customer in the unit and the customer being delivered food at home. So possibly restaurant brands become just grocery brands with no hinterland in the hospitality restaurant experience. And as a result, control will pass to the delivery companies. So there's quite a lot potentially happening in that space. And finally, will a new business model emerge and crush all before it? Well, just to answer that, and here's really my last slide, what actually happens may be something like this. In 1803, Richard Trevithick, who was an English engineer, developed a concept car driven by cutting-edge technology, the steam engine. He called it the London steam carriage. And the leading-edge technology was married to a long-established social model with a servant driving in the front and sitting on the outside in the wind and the rain, and passengers housed in a compartment that was a stagecoach, because that's all they knew about how you deliver, how you drive a lot of people at one time. So that was the concept at the time, and this was going to rule the world. Well, fast forward 200 years, and we now have the Tesla supercar, which can do 0 to 60 in 2.4 seconds, top speed of over 250 miles an hour, powered by electricity, and more to come. So where is delivery on this timeline? I suspect it's closer to Trevithick than to Tesla. I also suggest that you come back in 200 years' time to find out. And if I'm wrong, you can have your money back. Thank you.